She spoke the world into existence. Did you know the material that this is made out of was created by words? You and I were created by words. So words are the parent force. Everything on this planet responds to words. You know, that's an absolute truth. I know that these are probably fake. I don't know, but
Those are fake. Yeah. Fake flowers.
But did you know that I've actually spoken to plants that were dying and just spoke life over them and blessed them and stuff, and I've seen those things come back to life. My mother kept me alive during those poverty days. She didn't know she was doing it, but I'd go over and mow her lawn, and she'd fix me something to eat, and that's the only thing we'd eat for a week. And we had 23 pecan trees in our yard. I know some people call them pecans. I told them that's what we used if you didn't want to go all the way out to the outhouse. But anyway, we called them pecan trees. So anyway, she had 23 pecan trees in her yard, and I'd mow, and as I'd go around those trees, I was so thankful. And she didn't even know that we were starving or anything, and I didn't want to tell her, so I would just bless these trees. When my dad died, we used to have 400 pounds of pecans a year that we would pick up, and we'd shell them and sell them. And when he died, she didn't take care of them, and they had bagworms, and we got to where we had 50 pounds of pecan. So I would bless those trees and just pray over them. Didn't do anything except speak to them. And that year we had over 600 pounds of pecans, when in the previous year we had 50. Wow. Everything on this planet responds to words. It says, Proverbs 18:21, death and life are in the power of our tongue. And so words are powerful. Psalms chapter 91, I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress. People will often quote Psalms 91 about no plague coming nigh your dwelling and all of these things, but they don't say it. Instead, somebody says, how are you? And they say, oh man, I'm sick. The doctor says, I'm going to lose my business, my marriage is falling apart, and they don't realize it, but they're hung by their tongue. They're destroying themselves with their own words. Jesus said in the 11th chapter of Mark, He says, whoever will say unto this mountain, be thou removed, be thou cast into the sea, and shall not doubt in his heart, but believe that those things which he saith will come to pass, he will have whatsoever he saith. So the blessing of God is voice activated. You have to speak it. And when you start speaking, everything in this world system was created by words. It will respond to words. And you start speaking the blessing of God over you, and it'll come to pass. The only exception to that, it says in Romans chapter 10, you have to confess with your mouth and believe with your heart. It's not just mouthing it, but then in your heart, doubting it. But if you can believe it in your heart and speak it out your mouth, you will release the supernatural power of God, and this blessing will begin to start flowing in your life.
We're talking about Living in God's Best, Andrew Wommack's brand new book. It's just out, just recently out, just last week or so. And it is available by calling the number on your screen. We're talking about the difference between miracles and blessings. And blessings are voice activated. And
you were talking about when the children of Israel were living on the manna, that was a miracle, but it was, you say,
temporary.
Yeah.
It was temporary.
But it was better in the promised land.
And when they entered into the I can just guarantee you this, because I deal with people, that there were some of those people that were raised in the wilderness and had never eaten anything but manna, that when they went into the promised land, they said, no way am I going to dig a hole in the ground and plant seeds and weed it and do this. I'm going to go out and gather my manna. And yet it says in Joshua chapter 5 that on the next day after they entered into the promised land, the manna ceased and they never had it again. It was only temporary. And if a person says, well, I'm a full gospel person, I'm not going to sit here and work to get mine, I'm going to just receive it directly from God, they would starve to death because the time for the miracle was over. And now you have to start putting into practice the laws that God created in the natural and spiritual realm to reap and to be able to eat.
Okay, for the beginner who doesn't have this book in their hand yet, they'll get it and it'll get to you, all that, and we'll read it and do it. How do we get started with this? What are the beginning course of hearing our own voice?
You got to understand what we've said. First of all, about that the blessing is better than a miracle, you've got to understand it's the favor of God and that you have to speak it over yourself. It's voice activated. And if you understand those things and really believe it, then it's as simple as just turning to the Word and finding out what are the blessings that God has said. Like, for instance, Ephesians 1:3, you're blessed with all spiritual blessings.
Yeah.
You're blessed with healing. You're blessed with prosperity. You're blessed with joy, peace, happiness. And you just start taking these things. Deuteronomy chapter 28 is a great place to turn, where it says that, you're blessed coming in, you're blessed going out. You're blessed in your basket and in your store. Whatever you set your hand unto is blessed. And you just start speaking these things. I had a situation where I was buying a house and I defaulted on the payment. The landlord or the owner was carrying it, and I went to him and told him, I said, I'm sorry, I don't have the money, but I said, my wife's blood's worth $150 a pint. I said, we'll get you your money, but I don't have it today. And he says, well, you can work it off. And he had a photo shop, and he had a contract with the high school to produce all of their photos. I'd never done that in my life. But I said, I'll do it. And I got in, and I started speaking over myself that I can do this. And the very first time, he took me in and shot one of these pictures and came out and looked at it, and he says, what's wrong with this picture? And I said, nothing. It looks great to me. And he says, too much magenta. I didn't even know what magenta was. And he gave me just about an hour's worth of training, and then he turned me loose. And anyway, it's a long story, but I did things that he had been doing this for 26 years. And he came in one time and he says, I saw this. He says, you couldn't do this again if your life depended on it. He said, I was raised in this business. I've done this for 26 years. You couldn't do that again. I took him into another room and showed him over 100 pictures that I had done that exact same thing to. And he just threw his hand up and he says, I don't know what you're doing. But he says, keep doing it. And I saved the guy's business. He offered me 50% ownership in his business after 2 months because it had turned around. And that's when God called me to go to another place, and I had to turn him down because I was called to someplace else. And he brought in a replacement. And this replacement, I started training him. And we went in and shot a picture and brought it out. And I said, what's wrong with this picture? He said, nothing. I said, too much magenta. And anyway, I started trying to train him. And finally, he says, how do you know these things? How is it that you can tell this? And I finally just said, I pray in tongues. And God tells me what to do. And this panic came over this guy's face like, what do I do? And I said, I can teach you how to pray in tongues, and other than that, you're on your own. And I've just seen God's blessing on me. And it's because, first of all, I believe I'm blessed.
Yeah.
If you ask me how I am, I can guarantee you, I say it 100 times a day. I'm blessed. When people say, how are you? I'm blessed. I have been saying it for 20 or 30 years. I'm blessed every day. When everything in my life looks like I'm cursed, I'll still speak that I'm blessed. I'll speak it. And you do that, and after a while, you get to where you really believe it. And because of it, I believe that you could put me in any situation, I'm going to come out ahead. I'm blessed. And so, to answer your question, you have to believe this. You have to really believe it. And then if you believe it, you have to speak it. Instead of what you feel, you have to speak what you believe.
Wow.
I had a man. If you got something
No,
else.
I was just going to say, do you believe that you could beat me in arm wrestling? Because I don't think you could.
Well, there's some natural laws. It might take a miracle. It might have to be a miracle. But I had this guy one time that he was a greeter in our church, and he was an older fella, and he got pneumonia, and he went into the hospital. They released him, but he couldn't get over it, and he had missed church for week after week. So I finally went over to his house, and God had just been showing me these things, and he was just crying. He says, I know God heals. I've seen God heal me, but I can't seem to get over this. And he was just distraught. And so I just took my hands and cupped them over his chest, and I spoke the blessing into his lungs. I said, lungs, you are blessed. And I know some people think this is weird, but Jesus said you have to speak to your mountain. He didn't tell you to speak to God about your mountain. He told you to speak to the mountain. And that man's problem wasn't God. It was the phlegm that was in his lungs. So I cut my hands, and I just started speaking. First of all, I cursed that pneumonia and commanded it to die. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. And then I just spoke the blessing of God. Lungs, you're blessed. you're healed. And I just started speaking to his lungs and blessing them. And he had to literally push me out of the way and go and get a towel. He had to get 2 towels, and he coughed up all of this phlegm, and within 10 minutes, he was totally normal.
My goodness.
And that's the power of a blessing. And yet, often, God healed me. What you need to do is start thanking, Father, thank you that you have healed me, and you have given me this raising from the dead power. I have this authority, and then you activate it by speaking. I am blessed. I'm healed. You start speaking to things, and I guarantee you'll see results happen.
Okay, so the people, so Balaam said, I can't reverse it. I've tried, I can't do it, but the people themselves can do it. How, where, what?
They curse themselves. And you know, this can be done obvious ways, such as you go out and commit adultery, you can lie, you can steal, and even though God still loves you, and it doesn't change God's feelings toward you at all. It says in Romans 6:16, know ye not that to whom ye yield yourselves, servants to obey, his servants you are, to whom ye obey, whether of sin unto death or of obedience unto righteousness. God loves us independent of our performance. It's totally grace. But when you go out and live in sin, you just invite the devil to come in and bring his worst. And you aren't going to prosper if you do that. So there's obvious ways that you can stop the blessing, but there's subtle ways too. And you know, what you mentioned just a minute ago, in January the 31st, 2002 is when the Lord spoke to me, Psalm 78:41, that I had limited him by my small thinking. And since that time, I have seen, huge increases. It's phenomenal. Our income in 2001 was, I think, less than $2 million a year. In this last year, and I'm only saying this just to show you that the Word works. That's the only reason. But our income this last year was over $63 million in 15 years' time. And the deal was, I wasn't out sinning. I wasn't rebelling at God, but I had fear. I had fear in me that I wouldn't speak out what God had put in my heart because I was afraid of how people would take it, that they would criticize me and say, I'm building my kingdom.
Hey, shut the
And
bathroom
because
door.
of the fear of other people, I wasn't activating the blessing of God and boldly saying what God said. So you can limit God through subtle ways like that look good on the surface. It looked like I was trying to be humble. But anytime God tells you something and you're afraid to say it because of people's reaction, that's not humble. That's actually pride.
Wow.
You are putting your people's opinion of you ahead of God's opinion.
We're talking about living in God's best. Andrew Womack's broadcast airs right here on Trinity Broadcasting. I want you to know about that. His book is available by going to that 800 number on the screen. We've got a few more minutes left in this broadcast. I want to, you've been talking about this monumental shift in your ministry. Now Charis Bible College is up in the Colorado Springs area. You've got a little roll-in that'll show you a little bit more about what Andrew Womack does. Give you that proof that, you know, what you're talking about works. Watch this.
Is it in the bed?
The whole motive behind Charis is 2 Timothy chapter 2, verses 1 and 2, where Paul said, be strong in the graces in the Lord Jesus, and the things that you have heard of me among many witnesses, the same commit thou to faithful men and women who will be able to teach others.